Once in a blue moon, there comes a great man who lives for a great ideal, and in that process, he enriches the lives of all people he touches upon. This is a universal truth right from time immemorial. The most recent one, which is still in our memory, is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, who did so many things for the modern India that we call ourselves today, while still imbibing the old world principles about self-sustainability and self-regulation and so on and so forth. My dear listeners, this is Babuji Janakarajan, your RJ, and you're listening to Radio Udaan, the great Indian Monologue talk show. In this episode, I am going to introduce you to one such great man who walked this earth and who went back to the source from where he came in some years back. His name is Nammazhvar. He was a natural farmer, agriculture scientist turned natural farmer who lived in the South Indian state of TamilNadu, and he spent a major part of his life spreading the know-how about natural farming, basically collecting the know-how from the grassroots farmers and spreading it to anybody and everybody who cares to listen, and all the while, fighting for seed sovereignty and food sovereignty of the great land called India. Okay. In this episode, I'm actually going to share some information about him as kind of a biodata, plus some key aspects of his life, which stands like a beacon in the ocean of darkness that is the modern chemical-induced farming that the whole world seems to be practicing these days, right? By education, he was an agriculture scientist, and by profession also, he began his career as agriculture scientist in a research station in a place called Kovilpatti in the Tamil Nadu state. He spent about few years meticulously recording the happenings of the work in the Agriculture Research Institute, data-driven kind of, he was collecting all kind of data he could right from day in and day out. And after analyzing the data and witnessing what was happening in ground in terms of research and productivity and the outcome of all the efforts put forth by that research institute, he came to a conclusion that any practice, that costs a big amount of money will never help our farmers to get more money in his or her bank account, right? Costly technologies, they really don't help our farmers and the farming practices. This was his finding. So he shared this finding with his colleagues in the research institute. All of them agreed, but then when he requested them to put it forth in a presentation to be given to the higher officials, which constituted of the state and central government officials, the research institute colleagues, they refused flat, telling that, we agree with you, we agree with your findings, but, this is the only research station in our state, which is at least trying to do something. And if you give this kind of a contradictory information, they will surely shut down our facility and we will become jobless. So why do you want to do this? But him being the son of a farmer and having practiced farming in his life, he couldn't make himself come to terms with the modern agricultural practice pushed by the research institute and the research institute and the governments everywhere that were pushing more and more chemicals into our soil. He had seen, firsthand what happened to the life forms in those soils, in those fields where the chemical inputs were dumped. The yields were going down. Most of the insects and other forms of, life like herbs and everything were dying down. And the plants were also, the crop, which the whole mechanism was trying to protect and to increase yield was actually withering because of so many unknown diseases. This was a huge eye-opener for him, and he couldn't convince himself to keep propagating these practices to the unaware farmer, the poor farmers of India, because he knew that whatever he was doing through the research institute and the larger mechanism was not really farmer friendly. So what he does, he informs his superior that he wouldn't like to continue the job anymore and he would quit and he would go back to his village. The senior lady to whom he shared this, she was kind enough to listen to him fully, agree with him, and she also advised him to get a job, to do something, and then to pursue his dream of natural farming, to have a cushion for his family and so on. It was the same advice which he took. So he moved on to an NGO, a non-governmental organization, which was involved in relocating and rehabilitating people who were impacted by the Second World War all over the world. One of the activities which his team was involved was to relocate some people from a war-torn area into an African nation, into a patch of land where they were educated and trained to do farming. He loved the job so much, and he was fully involved, and he was learning as much as he could. And then when he met the founders of the NGO and had a conversation about the whole thing and his desire to do something similar in India, and when he asked them what they would suggest, the founder, he simply told them to do what Mr. Gandhi had been telling all along for the Indian people, right? Because Gandhi was talking about sustainability, self-sustainability, Swarajya, You become the master of whatever you do, all spheres of your life, right? This was a great advice from a great man to another great man. I mean, the man who would become a great man. So Mr. Nammazhvar, he actually quit the job and relocated to a small hillock in a district called Dharmaburi. Around 1960s, the Tamil Nadu state was building a big dam, the so-called Mettur Dam, to store water and to help irrigation for a larger area. When this dam construction was taken up, a lot of villagers had to give the land because they were going to be submerged under the dam water, right? Those people who were farmers, they didn't know anything else other than farming. But they were being forced to move from the villages for a larger cost, and they relocated themselves to a hillock in Dharmaburi state, which is mostly a dry district, right? Dharmaburi district, which is mostly a dry district. And they relocated to the hilltop. And within a short while, they started practicing the plain land agriculture on the hills, which was disastrous. Because whatever they could do on a plain land, it wouldn't work in a hill because of the slope and the different climatic conditions and so on and so forth. So Mr. Nammazhvar, he stayed with them and he learned the difficulties and the best practices that they used to do earlier, before the dam was constructed. And he decided to make it his life mission to spread the know-how he had accumulated to the people who needed. And he wanted to make sure that all such exchanges also helped him to learn something from the people who come to meet him, right? So he started touring around the state extensively, talking about natural farming and the ill effects of chemical inputs. And he put forth a very valid, pertinent question, which is still relevant for not just the farmers of Tamil Nadu, but the farmers of India, but also to a larger extent, the farmers of the whole world. His argument is very simple. A farmer who was doing everything on his own with a few cows and bulls, the native breed, he was pushed into modern farming, where every touch point that he engages with a larger market, right from the tractors which haul fertilizers to his farm, the industry which manufactures the tractors and other such tools and equipments, they become crorepathies, right? And the people who manufacture the fertilizers, they became crorepathies. And the people who actually manufactured the pesticides, which were applied in his farm to kill the pest, they too became crorepathies. And the people who manufactured herbicides, the chemical inputs which kill all kind of herbs, unwanted herbs, they also became crorepathies. The transportation people who operated the lorries to haul these fertilizers and other chemical inputs from place to place, they became crorepathies. And the people who sold the fuel for these vehicles, they became crorepathies. Right? This is the supply chain. On the other hand, whatever he produced, the people who took it from his farm to the market, they became crorepathies. And the people who bought these stuff from the market, they became crorepati's because they were working in those industries, which were apparently or theoretically helping the farmer to do more and more modern farming. But in all this process, the farmer still stayed poor, accumulating more and more debt, and in many cases committing suicide too. So this is the fundamental question that he poses to all his audience, regardless of how high they are placed or how low they are from life. He keeps asking these pertinent questions. If so many people are benefiting, but still the basic person, the basic one, all these were trying to help, still staying poor or even becoming poorer and poorer, are we doing the right thing? So starting from this, he kept sharing the know-how about how to make sustainable farming profitable, meaningful and sustainable, and villages were the fulcrums of his speech and his activities, right? He used to visit many farms all over the state, stay there for a while, observe what was happening in the farm and share his know-how to improve things which could be improved, right? Naturally, he became kind of enemy number one for all the multinational companies who were becoming more and more crorepati's, or who were actually making more and more crorepati's in the larger society except the farmers, right? And he was the sane voice. If I could draw a parallel, Mr. Bhaskar Save, who was running the Kalpavriksha farm in the Maharashtra-Gujarat border area, he comes very close to the ideologies and the ethics of Mr. Nammazhvar, right? In the last 30-35 years, during which Mr. Nammazhvar was spreading this information and establishing some model farms in a few places in Tamil Nadu, educating people with hands-on experience of good farming practices and self-sustainable practices, how to save seeds, some kind of a reform has taken roots in my state, that is Tamil Nadu, where more and more people have adapted to the sustainable natural farming way shown by Mr. Nammazhvar. So seed savers and good farming practitioners and so on and so forth. The ecosystem has been slowly built up over the last 15-20 years, and in a short while it will accumulate some kind of a critical mass. From then on, it would take care of itself. This is a kind of scenario where one man sane thinking about the evils of modern farming and the alternatives had brought into a state which was predominantly agrarian ever since we started farming, right? Though Tamil Nadu is one of the most advanced industrialized states of our country, adding a lot to the GDP or the gross domestic product growth of our country to our economy, the farming is also slowly reviving. So I hope, this kind of balances it out in the long run. Unfortunately, this practice hasn't been taken up outside of the southern region, maybe because of the language barrier. But of late, there are the farmers who are visiting from other states to Tamil Nadu to these kind of natural farmers' lands to learn more and to exchange know-how. This is happening. It's a small trickle, but then the trickle will become oceans, right? This is how it always happens. I would like to share some funny but profound quotes by Mr. Nammazhvar. When people were actually talking about the goodness of modern tractors, he used to counter them with a simple question. You gave us tractors and took away our bulls and cows. Our bulls and cows would give birth to children, basically the calves, once in every 18 months or so. But would your tractor ever give birth to a junior tractor? Or would your tractor ever give the dung which we used to get from our cows and bulls? These are the kind of quotes which he used to connect with the ground level farmers who are more or less uneducated or illiterate, to drive home the point about the goodness of the natural farming and the perils or the evils of the alternative farming. He was dead against the chemical farming and in a way single-handedly revived organic inputs, which are used by many farmers in our state, right from the vermicompost to panchakavya and whatnot. In this process, he had lit up quite a few intellectual lamps in our landscape, which are burning bright these days. And I wish the light reaches all parts of India and self-sustainable natural farming becomes the norm, wherein every farming practitioner of our country, every single farmer is able to produce his or her own food from his or her own land before making anything for the markets. So, a while back, I actually told you about the hazards of, crorpatis, which were becoming crorpatis at the expense of the farmer. The conclusion of his statement about all those guys becoming rich while the farmer staying poor was, if the farmer ever goes to the market, he will be robbed. This is the way he actually put it. So, what is the best thing for the farmer? The farmer, if he is able to bring the market to his or her farm, will be the only way he could accumulate wealth and health too. Just think about it. Most of the farmers who produce rice and wheat and whatnot, the basic, food staples, they sell all they produce right on the day of the harvest because they were indebted to do the cultivation and they had to settle the money back the moment they get their hands on the cash. So they sell everything and then they go to the market to buy those cereal staples like wheat or rice or whatever. So his ideology or his practical wisdom is, what stops you from growing your own food in your own land and do something more which can be given to the market, provided the market comes to your farm and picks it up. You don't go to the market. Think about it, my dear friends. This is a profound wisdom which will help us become a food surplus nation in a good way, in an earth-friendly way, in a soil-positive way going forward. Thank you for listening. I'm your RJ Babuji Janakarajan. This is Radio Udaan, and you have just listened to yet another episode of the Great Indian Monologue. Holiday season, winter season, COVID season. Stay home, stay healthy, stay positive, and stay blessed. I'll talk to you again in yet another episode in a new year soon. Till then, goodbye.